Welcome back. You're listening to the panel discussion, The Intersection of CDM and Mobile Security in Government, sponsored by Mobile Iron on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. I'm your host, Jason Miller. My guests today, Adam Zimet, the Branch Chief for Identity, Credential, and Access Management at the Agriculture Department, Micah Segan, the Associate Deputy CIO for Cybersecurity at the Energy Department, Andrew Lefelt, a CDM Chief Strategist for Mobile Iron, and Stephen Boer, the Lead Mobile Systems Architect for Booz Allen Hamilton's CDM program. Now, gentlemen, before break, we're setting the table for what is CDM and why mobility is playing such a bigger role in it. And one of the things that I think has started to kind of emerge, and Micah, lead us off on this, is when it comes to mobility, when it comes to the tablets, and it comes to the laptops, and a lot of people don't even think of laptops as mobile devices, but we know you can move with them versus that big desktop. The threat vector is much different. So talk about what threat vectors you guys maybe are seeing, and then why is mobile so much different?
Sure. So as I said before, your smartphone, your tablet, these are computers. And so they have all the traditional threat vectors that we would see with our desktops, but now we have an added component, which is now we take them and we bring them on the train or the metro, in the car. And so when we leave the office, we've still got our Wi-Fi on, or we have our Bluetooth on. And it's not, so we're introducing these new threat vectors of the mobile environment itself, of not being in this protective bubble of the building itself. We take it home, we put it on our home network. What else is on our home network? Our home PC and all the vulnerabilities that are associated with that, or somebody who's on the train who's decided he'd like to hack your phone or your tablet. So we're adding all these additional threat vectors, which are very difficult to see on a mobile device from the building where our server sits that's monitoring all these devices. And it's really easy to intercept those signals in between. So that's really this new added component of threat to mobile.
And you didn't even bring up the fact that if you're sitting doing work, I can look over your shoulder and read what you're doing.
That's very true.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I thought you were going to go down there next when you talk about the train or the bus or the metro.
Well, that's true, because now we're introducing, not classified, but certainly, you know, I don't want them to know some of the information that's on my screen.
I can just tell you as a reporter, I would never do that.
Of course not.
No, never. Adam, maybe also talk about, from USA's perspective, the threats are a little different from maybe the more sensitive side of energy, but just the same. Data, crop data or important data is data.
Well, and one of the things I think we've seen is that the tools that people are using and the apps that people are using on the phones is far more personal with mobile devices, meaning it's not always a enterprise prescribed tool that does a certain function. There's a lot of apps that are very useful, that are available in stores, that are readily available, and we see people using those. And what's different is the governance processes that we had for a traditional desktop computing environment, where we're very tightly controlling and vetting applications that are built or deployed onto workstations, or we're going through rigorous authorization processes for applications that we're building, just don't apply or aren't being done in the mobile space, but we're accessing the same enterprise resources and the same enterprise data. So being able to vet those applications, make sure that security is really baked into those applications, not bolted onto them afterward, and that we know that those applications are behaving in an appropriate manner is really important. And having our governance processes catch up to that so that we can leverage that to more rapidly authorize the applications for use and keep people productive.
Mobile app vetting is a great point. I think for years the CIO Council, DHS has looked into it. They have something called the car wash, and there's still this, what I feel like this, if it's not a struggle, it's still very in the early stages of, okay, how do we deal with this app vetting thing? Do you guys have a process too, or do you use somebody else's process for app vetting?
We're building a new mobile strategy now to take it to the next step, and we're looking for CDM to really help us out in some of these areas as we start moving beyond just the basic device management.
All right, Andrew, Steve, one of you guys jump in here, because I think they give you some to-do lists now, right? Steve?
Yeah, sure. So I agree with all of the threat vectors. I think that in general, there's the workforce perceives the mobile device differently than they have the laptop. They've accepted the strict governance for years on the laptop, but they don't understand and don't agree with that governance on the mobile device. And I think that's a big challenge that we have as we work with agencies. Implementing on mobile is applying the same level of security that's seamless to the end user. Agree with the points on app vetting and as a big threat risk. It really a strong strategy has to include not all the way from the development to the deployment of the application, the whole life cycle, the iterative updates. All of that needs to be, especially with custom applications and developed applications, needs to be controlled, and that security built into the app from the ground up. So totally agree with all of those points there.
Andrew, jump in.
Yeah, so I as well agree with the threat vectors. They're dynamic, they change on a daily basis. What Mobile Iron's done with our mobile threat defense is address the new vectors that have come up around the device OS being compromised, zero-day attacks like meltdown or stage fright, and our ability to leverage a machine learning algorithm on the device now allows us to mitigate that risk before it actually occurs. And the same would be true for the Wi-Fi connections or some malfeasance that might be going on within the communication links. We can identify that before it actually causes a risk to the communication or to the individual's device. And the same is true about the app vetting capabilities of industry today. I agree that they've done a great job around the initial vetting of the apps and the code level and the development of it. But where there are gaps and challenges, I think, in industry as well as within the government is, what do you do once you put the applications onto a mobile device and you start using it in production? How do you manage the operations and sustainability of those mobile apps and the device throughout its life cycle? So in essence, what we've now done is look at an enterprise architecture that supports the mobile workforce, but we're applying a CDM lifecycle strategy to the management of not only the device, but the security posture of the device, as well as the mobile app. And the most important aspect of this new innovative way of looking at CDM through our platform is we have the automated abilities to mitigate and remediate those risks as they happen.
Why do you think agencies treat mobile devices differently than laptops or desktops? Is it just in our personal life versus our professional life, or what?
Well, again, I think a lot of different agencies, depending on their missions and their business use cases, the risk of extending the enterprise architecture to a mobile device that isn't managed is too great, right? So that is a huge hesitancy to support BYOD, let alone the privacy issues and the policy
issues. Let me put a
issues.
finer point on it, maybe, because one of the things about it is, and I think, as Stephen said, it's easy for me to say, well, it's not my desktop, it's Energy's desktop. But if Energy gives me a phone, it's still not my phone, right? It's still Energy's phone. But for some reason, it's more personal. Is that the difference? Is it because I hold it's in my pocket, it's in my purse, I carry it home with me, Micah calls me in the middle of the night to tell me my server's down, right? I mean, right. Is that the difference between a phone where my desktop's always at work, it's kind of cold, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's partially a cultural thing. An evolution of how the mobile workforce is starting to leverage these new devices, tablets, and mobile phones. There's also the challenges of managing multiple OSs. So between Android and iOS, Windows 10, Mac OS, how do you manage all that in an enterprise with the same optics and cybersecurity compliance that's required from the traditional desktop? And so as these new tools and innovative ways are coming to market, I think agencies are going to have much more of a comfort level on extending more of their applications and their cloud services to the mobile workforce.
Micah, Andrew brings up a very interesting point in cloud. I've talked to your CIO several times over the last couple of months, and he's brought up this idea of this push to the cloud for Energy. What does that open up from a threat vector perspective when it comes to mobile devices, the cloud?
So we are seeing more and more for mobile devices. We have a limited amount of storage, and so we're putting more and more data in the cloud on mobile devices. And now, so we're adding yet another threat vector into the cloud. So no matter how much we secure the cloud and put all kinds of wrappers around it, now we've got to punch a hole into it in order to get data from the device that we already consider, that we're already not monitoring and consider a threat vector. And so we're just increasing that threat. Mobile devices also introduce, there's a carrier in between, right? I can't monitor AT&T and Verizon. We have to rely upon them. And so now we're going to make this connection into the cloud that I can't see and I can't monitor. And so I can only see the device and I can only see the cloud. And the cloud, we are, as Max Everett said, we are moving heavily to a cloud-based environment. And so we're putting our data in there, the really important stuff. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's better, and now I want to connect a mobile device to it. So that's a huge risk for us, because I don't have that control of that mobile device that I had there, and I'm going to connect it to the keys to the kingdom.
Adam, you're in the same boat in many ways in terms of USDA is moving a big push for the cloud through the Centers of Excellence initiative. And at the same time, I'm talking to your CIO, Gary Washington, you guys also are getting out of the data center business and going from 37 to 2 or something over the next 18 months. What kind of threat vectors do you see from that will add to the mobile device challenge?
Well, we sort of see mobile and cloud almost as kind of two sides of a similar coin there, and that we're moving beyond the traditional security boundaries, that we've worked so hard for so long to protect. And a lot of those practices and methods just don't apply anymore, either on the cloud side or on the mobile side. So it really requires a different change in thinking in how we secure both of those endpoints, the data and infrastructure now being in the cloud, and oftentimes the endpoints used to access it, being on mobile devices and outside our standard network security boundaries.
And I think the boundary piece is huge, right? We used to talk about the endpoints, and now we don't talk about endpoints anymore, right? It's you, Adam is the endpoint, or Mike is the endpoint, right?
Exactly, and so moving towards that really requires a more identity-centric, method of controlling access, whether that's to cloud resources or on the mobile device, and new ways of looking at that. The traditional PIV cards don't work, in this case. That's been the, foundation for access, in the government for a long time. So we're looking at derived credentials and other methods to, still provide a strong authentication for a user, but in a way that's more mobile friendly and more, capable and seamless on a mobile device. But it's also looking at context, I think, of users accessing too. So where is the device? When is it accessing? Who is accessing? And factoring in all those different inputs into an access decision to control something, because we can't rely just solely on strong network boundaries anymore.
Stephen, it's almost like I feel like Adam opened the door for us to walk through it together on this, because one of the big things that Booz has done, obviously, is as part of phase. I know we don't call phases anymore of CDM, but part of the next set of capabilities is credential and priv.
Right.
And that credential piece is okay, how do we deal with CDM and credentialing? Can you maybe talk a little bit of where we're at, what you're seeing from your customers around credential and priv as it relates to, obviously, mobility and CDM?
Right. So we're seeing a push for new solutions for credential management on mobile devices, looking at derived credential solutions and other single sign-on options as well. There are new ways to do multi-factor authentication that we're seeing implemented across agencies, and we're even seeing that in our personal lives too, with how we access personal email. And so we're seeing clients move more in that direction, and we're looking at these challenges now in the context of CDM and how we bring that into the CDM world and with these agencies is also. Cloud security definitely highlight a point brought up about the differences in methodology and how you think about how to secure cloud, because you don't own all of the cloud. So there's new ways to, some cloud providers have built-in solutions to pull data and implement security, but then you can implement third-party tools as well. So we're balancing all of that and looking at new strategies for how to secure cloud infrastructure and services as well. So, software as a service presents a particular challenge because you own none of the infrastructure at that point. So what types of solutions like cloud access security broker solutions could be implemented to secure those clouds? Those are I think kind of what's on the horizon as we move CDM into cloud and mobile.
And obviously, OMB opened the door several months ago with their draft identity policy that said two-factor authentication can be two-factor authentication. It does not have to be PIV card based. Has that been a bit of a, even though the policy is not finalized yet, but has that been helpful for you as agencies are asking for help with this idea of access management? And maybe it's something Adam to jump into.
I think that agencies are still assessing options and moving towards those, looking at what makes the most sense, and we're helping some agencies along with that. I think it's still in practice hasn't been fully implemented yet.
And Adam, jump in here as well.
Yeah, and it's been, that's going to give us a big opening to evolve, those concepts. And for so long it was PIV, and PIV was really the only part of the conversation. And PIV is still important, and we see that as still a foundational credential and process, but it isn't going to work in every single use case. And we're looking at, expanding those options and capabilities through, more industry standard options or capabilities as two-factor authentication becomes more standard in our private lives as well, and how we can leverage those same things, moving forward, and in areas like mobile.
Micah.
So I think the key to two-factor or whatever authentication is to make it seamless to the end user. We can't put so much security wrap around it that nobody wants to use it, because then it's going to become shadow IT. They're going to go figure out a way around it, right? So if we can make it easy, retinal with your finger scan or something that's very quick, very easy, that people are already used to, right? I mean, everybody sees the little thumbprint on the iPhone, right? Or fingerprint and retinal scan. I mean, those are things that people are accustomed to. So we need to find those mechanisms and combine them together to provide a secure mechanism for authentication.
And Steve, you were going to jump in?
I was just going to say, this is, we're talking in the context of mobile, but this is coming with the more traditional endpoint devices, as well as the new tablets and the new laptops aren't coming with CAT card readers, and that's, so, PIV is a little bit legacy. It's starting to become more legacy, and people are not going to want to have a dongle for very much longer on their laptops. So that's going to, we're going to see a push even on the devices. So that single sign-on solution that's just we're talking about for mobile is probably going to move to traditional endpoints as well.
And that's really why the CDM program is such an important piece to this, because it's not just the tools that come with CDM, but it's that back end, as you said, infrastructure that's going to allow you to have more confidence in the security of those devices. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we have jump into our third segment and talk more security. You're listening to the panel discussion, The Intersection of CDM and Mobile Security in Government, sponsored by Mobile Iron on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network.